There we go. Leigh Stein. Wow, you're here.
Hello.
I'm thrilled. Hello. Hi. I'm so excited to be talking about if you're seeing this, it's meant for you. I logged on to Substack this morning, semi-automatically, but like it was my feed was very like Leigh Stein abundant. Um, it's like, oh man, I'm just going into this interview with her next. So yeah, Leigh, thank you for coming on the Podstack. Um, Thank you for writing a hilarious, insightful, like influencer gothic internet horror book.
Thank you so
Love
much.
your
Thanks for
novel.
having me and reading it so closely.
Oh yeah, no, it was a total delight. Leigh, some folks are going to be, I think a lot of folks who follow me are kind of in that sort of like long form online literary sphere. So I think many people will know you, but for those who don't, Leigh Stein is the author of six books, a few of which are behind you, or a couple of which are behind you, including the critically acclaimed satirical novel Self Care. And of course, we'll hold this up again, the most recent one. If you're seeing this, it's meant for you. Um, you're also the creator of the attention economy, and this is what your Substack is called. And I would love to. We will talk a bit more about this, but folks, if you don't follow Leigh, please do, especially if you're kind of wanting to learn more about the industry, how one goes about just like writing, publishing, even dare I say, marketing a book, right? It's
Yes, thank
like
you.
you are, oh, Leigh. I mean, you demystify it, but I think you also like you do so without encouraging people to head down the like ROI metrics path. Like it's yeah. You can
Yeah,
speak
I
to
try
all
to
of
think,
this.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like the human side of sharing our
exactly.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah, right. Like it's like the work is going to be shared, and yes, I would like it to find a readership. I
Yeah.
would. And yes, we're living in 2025. Okay, like these are realities that we're happy to acknowledge. How can we do that while still like being human, being creative, being individual, and not just
Yeah.
sort of endlessly going down a wormhole of gaming the metrics?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Speaking of gaming the metrics, you have really written a book about that. And and the disasters of doing that. But we'll get more we'll get more on that in a moment. You have so you write for that Substack. You've also written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, Allure, Elle, Airmail, and The Cut. And you were also an editor, right? Were you in a choir? Or am I getting that
I was never
wrong?
an editor. I do have a past life running a feminist writing conference called BinderCon for 3 years. So that's my other claim to fame. That's my other past
Oh,
life.
okay. Well,
So some
fabulous.
people watching this might be familiar with like the Binders Full of Writers. It's like an online Facebook community. So I didn't start the Facebook community, but I started the conference based on the Facebook community. I did that for 3 years. I burned out on that, and that inspired me to write self-care.
Oh, wow, amazing. Okay, so it's kind of like Russian nesting dolls of a story within a story.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
That's fabulous. That was you. Okay, cool. I knew there was another hidden layer to Lisa.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah. Well, awesome. So, Leigh, we're going to talk about your national best-selling novel. Do you see how I slipped that in there?
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm also so excited to see this. This is just like endlessly deeply readable. And I can't wait to kind of just like get into how you have cracked the code, as it were, and brought us into such a horrifying world that is also such a humanly and deeply felt one. So please go ahead and read a selection to us from If You're Seeing This, It's Meant for You. Can't
Great.
wait.
Okay. So I'm going to read a section from a scene where it's the main character who's a 39-year-old aging millennial who can't find a new job in the media industry. Her boyfriend dumps her and she takes a job managing this hype house. She's totally out of her depths. She's not on TikTok. She has no idea what she's doing. Um, all she has to her advantage is a pet rabbit named Owen Wilson. So she decides to motivate the young people. If they grow their following a certain amount, they'll get to make content with her rabbit, Owen Wilson. So this is at the end of the scene where a 22-year-old kind of like young heartthrob in the house named Jake is creating content with the rabbit and he's live streaming. So imagine this is like a TikTok live stream. She's in the room with him, but he's holding the rabbit to the camera for his audience who are older women. Okay. How's everybody feeling today? Jake asked, which seemed to me like a pretty generic opening line, but his fans took the question seriously. like they'd been waiting all day for someone to care enough to ask. Shannon from the island was waiting for her biopsy results, and she was nervous given her genes. Trisha Rose, 77, said one of her littles was homesick and they were watching Jake together. Maddie's mom was experiencing some annoying side effects from her new meds. Rapidly, Jake acknowledged them all by name and responded to their disclosures with an astonishing mix of empathy and positivity. A geyser of heart emojis erupted continuously from the bottom right corner of the screen. His attention was like a drug. Hopefully, I've got something that will brighten your day a little bit, Jake teased. Take off your shirt. Ha 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 ha. You're too cute. You look handsome and huggable. Love you both ways. I can sit here all day. There were 1,000 women watching, and the comments were coming so quickly I could hardly keep up. Jake didn't engage the horny ones. I watched him gently lift Owen Wilson the way we'd practiced and turn him to face the camera, and then I turned my focus back to the screen to follow their reactions. Jake, you had a baby? You didn't tell us. What is his or her name? This is so sweet. How old is she? Is he a rescue? Can you say my name out loud, please? Jake leaned down to kiss the top of OW's head. His name is Owen Wilson. That's all he had to say. They couldn't believe it. What a perfect name for the rabbit. What a perfect pet for Jake. He was a natural. I'm crying. I think I just ovulated. This was when the donations started pouring in. Thousands of roses, some donuts, a coral reef that took up half the screen. I didn't know the monetary value of each gift, but Jake probably had a rough mental tally going. I have a family to support now, he told them with a straight face. So brazen. He was going to milk these women. There was a competitive nature to the tipping. Jake read the names aloud of his biggest donors, and that made the other women jealous. From the stream of comments, I learned that they were not only giving him gifts on the platform, they were also sending him cash directly, which they referred to as his allowance. When OW wanted down, Jake set him on the blankets and showed the women whatever they asked for. We want to see you stroke him, they said. They wanted to see his tail. They wanted to see Jake put things in Owen's mouth. Jake was their cam girl. He performed on command for cash. No wonder Jake hadn't told his parents what he was doing. After all, I'd never told mine about my self-portraits. We'd each found a corner of the internet where we did not have to be our parents' child. It was normal, I told myself, to seek independence from your family. It was the American way. Only Jake had figured out how to turn his rebellion into revenue.
Oh, thank you so much. Gosh, Leigh, I had to mute myself because I was laughing and I was thinking the whole time, like, you never watch the graduate and think, oh, I'll be Mrs. Robinson. So you never think like, oh, maybe
Right,
I'll,
you identify with Dustin Hoffman in that movie.
you're Dustin Hoffman, you're Benjamin. Yeah, oh,
Totally.
it's a right. And it's I think one of the things I just oh God love so much about your book is the humorous and again, like both humorous and very real way you address the our generation's aging. Like, as
Yeah,
we're kind of like in middle age or approaching middle age, whatever you want to call it, it's I think like there is a lot of there's like millennial fear, right? And of a sense of like the world moving so fast. But we're the ones who move fast. We're the digital natives, and it's like passing us
right.
by, right? But it's also
And
kind
I
of
think
it's funny.
millennials remember being the younger mocked
Yeah,
generation, like in the
right.
2000s. We were told that it's because we were eating so much avocado toast that we couldn't buy houses.
I know. I know. It's like well, but where was the part where we actually bought the house?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's like
But
we
I
had
think
too
that
much avocado
I
toast.
wonder if that's why we still feel
Yeah,
younger than, and I also had someone tell me that, because I don't know how old you are, but turning 40 was like a really disorienting for me. And I had
sure.
someone say to me, is it because my mid 30s were in the pandemic? Like I lost time. So it seems like how could I be
Mm.
40 because I lost several years?
Well, that's God, that's such a great point. Like we think so much about yeah, the kid like the high schoolers, right? What a kind of a devastation, like the young kids.
Yeah.
But we one can lose their 30s to a global pandemic. And it's yeah, no, it's I felt like I a lot happened that I kind of missed out
Yeah.
on. Yeah, and yet at the same time, here's my last thing I'll say about the pandemic, Lee. At the same time, it kind of felt like with all the very like hyper speed scrolling social media, we are online because we're not in person. I was like, how am I both sitting out on my life and in way more of a main character than I'd ever like to be?
Oh, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
and maybe I wonder if it's the effect of like being pitched to, like being the pitched to generation, being the advertised to generation, being the like holding the youth card, right? Well, I mean, if you're scrolling your screen, you're feeling endlessly pitched to. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something that kind of like resonates with you as well.
That's interesting. Well, it is true. I mean, this is kind of an off topic, but it's fresh in my mind. When I wrote self-care right after the inauguration in 2017, and I was
Mm,
scrolling Instagram and I was seeing all these posts from like white women in bathtubs, like quoting Audre Lorde, like taking care of myself is not self-indulgence, it's an act of warfare. You know what I mean? And then you would
hmm.
see an ad for like a juice detox. And I was like, oh,
Yes,
they
yeah,
they know that we're upset, they know that we're angry, and so they're marketing things to soothe us. And so the
yeah,
intersection of that is what started self-care. So it's true, like we are seeing content by people we choose to follow and advertising in our little pocket computer all the time.
all the time. And then right by like choosing to click on or engage with that content, it's like, oh, here's an esprit de corps. We're all upset about this pandemic or about this inauguration. Let's all buy this juice cleanse. We're upset.
Yeah.
Let's buy the juice cleanse. Like it's like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how the Bastille was stormed, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe probably not. But yeah, no, Lee, I'm excited to dive into, so excited to dive into if you're seeing this, it's meant for you specifically, because one of the things I really, really loved about this book, um, it's also kind of on the topic of like millennials on the internet and then Zoomers on the internet, is like you show through Dana, essentially this 39-year-old hype house
Hmm.
manager how like being online has changed over time. And you also show through her own creative interests and the way she engages with the world, people around her, and her own art, like how like a certain kind of confessional, like, like woman artist, like has existed long before Instagram, right? This is like a method
Yeah.
of it exploring oneself that we don't need social media for or has jumped to social media. And so I'll just read the question here because I put it down a little more, well, not concisely, but a little more clearly. One of my favorite things about this book is how posting online, which is often described as frivolous, addictive, and narcissistic, um, is an act that you situate within a long and storied tradition of female artists discovering themselves in self-portraiture and memoir. And if, well, da, da, da. And well, if you're reading this, certainly doesn't shy away from content creation as a self-obliterating wormhole. That is a topic that is explored judiciously, and I loved it. It also does a fantastic job of showing us like Francesca Woodman's haunting portraiture. I'm
Hmm.
like this book spoke to me because I was like, I'm a huge Francesca Woodman fan as well.
Yeah.
And for those watching who don't know, this is a young artist who kind of passed long before her prime, in her very early 20s, who made these incredible, sort of like surreal, eerie, and very haunting self-portraits, right out of art school. Um, so the fact that kind of like Woodman's portraiture and Dana's like Woodman inspired photography, aka real art, are positioned as distant cousins of the hyperspeed posting and documenting that happens today is, I think, so valuable because we don't really talk about like the art to content historical pipeline. It's so
Yeah.
easy to be like, well, this is garbage. And I think in dismissing the content, right, we're kind of dismissing this like bigger project, which is I would argue, like in many ways a very female project, right? There's
Hmm.
a lot of women kind of content creators and AKA artists, AKA whatever you want to call it, um, poets, memoirists, right? For whom posting has become a way to delegitimize the artwork.
Hmm.
How much and like where does the art stop and the content begin? And how much of this is in the eye of the beholder? You know what I mean? Like that's just your book has so many great questions that it raises.
It's such a good question. And like for me as an artist, like Sylvia, like I'm on the Sylvia Plath line like train, right? Like she was an early influence on my poetry, and I started posting poetry to Live Journal, which is an early blogging site in the early
Yes.
2000s. So I was
Yeah.
sharing poetry and short stories at a young age with an audience. But at the time, I was following these self-portrait photographers on LiveJournal, and they were slightly older than me. Like I was a teen, and they were like early 20s, so they were like women, you know. But I was
Hmm.
so influenced by them and impressed by them, and now even more clearly can I see the influence of Francesca Woodman on their work. So they were taking self-portrait photography, sometimes black and white. This is before selfie cameras, so they had to have a digital camera and a shutter release cord, so they had to be clicking something and
Yeah.
waiting or setting it on a timer. Um, and Francesca Woodman, one of the things that's so extraordinary about her is that she started taking self-portraits at like 13. By the time she arrived at RISD, she was already like a fully formed artist, and her classmates have said like we were all trying to figure it out, and Francesca like already knew exactly what she was doing. She'd already been doing work for so many years. And her work is very haunting, but I can see its influence. And it's interesting because it's like I wrote self-care, which is definitely a satire of wellness influencing. But I think the more time I spent on TikTok and the more I created TikTok content and I understood the amount of labor that goes into content creating, like it is laborious.
Mm.
I think I gained a new appreciation for the labor of content creation. I do still think I would differentiate between art and content. Content to me feels more like it would be the difference between like sketching and painting, I guess.
Hmm.
It's more
Yeah.
fast, it's more quick, it's more like of a draft for something else for later. I definitely
Hmm.
think of my books as my art. I wouldn't call my Substack newsletter art. I would call it content. It's not polished, it hasn't been edited. I write it the day that I send it. Like it's not, I don't go over it, whereas my books take so long to write. But the other connection I see between then and now is that I just think there's this like universal instinct, especially in women, I think, towards self-expression and exploring the self and like figuring out a mode in which to do that, whether that's writing bad poetry or that's taking selfies. I remember even as like a teenager getting I think I got like a black and white disposable camera so I could take like arty photos, with my friends at a sleepover. So there is this instinct to like document what it's like to be a young woman, what that experience is like, whether that's in a confessional Substack post or, you're crying to camera on TikTok. Not all of
Hmm.
that is art, but I think I'm looking at like the commonality of the instinct to document what it's like to live right now as a young woman.
I love that. And I would absolutely agree, right? I think there's a kind of that's a very like handy and accurate way to distinguish between content and art, right? Content is the sketch, art is sort of finished product, like the thing that one has labored over. But I think the thing that's really appealing to me, especially about what you said, is that there is a through line, right? Like if we want to call this sort of like life writing or like multimedia memoir, like kind of like a hybridized memoir form. I
Hmm.
mean, I think we can because there is a you know maybe it sounds like a McSweeney's internet tendency circa 2009 to be like Sylvia Plath's live journal. She would have been on live journal though.
Oh, I
She would
agree.
have
Sylvia
you
Plath
know
is so careerist.
she
She would have had
she
a Substack. It would have been
she oh my
paid.
God, she would have had many thousands of subscribers, tens of thousands of subscribers, if not, yeah, way more. But like no, I know, and this is like it makes me think, Lee, of the I was talking to like solidly sort of Gen X writer friends, and a guy who was kind of rolling his eyes at the all the like the dirty realism, the hardcore like 1980s like Raymond Carver only MFA workshop. And he was like, it was just so tedious to go into this workshop and be like, oh, hey, I'm kind of writing this like humorous story. And, maybe it's like spoofing. You think of George Saunders, right?
Yeah,
Spoofing like
yeah.
all this like no, 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 like late capitalist hyper like brand name kind of nonsense content, right? And I want to say like put the word Windex in my story, and my professor says no, that is a feature of the frivolous. And then yes, and I was like, and I was actually so proud of him because he's like, well, then me and my friends were like, oh, okay, so if everything in the story has to be timeless and nothing can be of the frivolous now, so should there be no telephones?
Right.
Like, should there be no TVs? Or he's like, well, no, I mean that's fine. And it kind of sussed out that like it's like, well, what John Updike puts in his stories, we could put in our. It became when they were kind of testing this
Well,
guy,
it's
it
so
became clear how
interesting.
arbitrary.
Yeah, but when
Yeah,
we talk about Emily Dickinson and her timeless poetry, she was
right.
using the language of flowers, which was of its time. Like
Yeah,
I
he
don't
was
know
using
what the
florography,
language.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yes,
she's writing about the Civil War or Walt Whitman. They're
yes.
writing poetry of their time and what the country was going through at that time, just as much as me writing about TikTok is of my time.
Absolutely. And see, and this is why I'm so excited that like to find writers of the internet, like people writing about, not to be annoying here, but people writing about the phenomenology of the internet. What is the internet and what's it doing and what's it like to be on it? It's
Yeah.
so much more interesting to me than just like, well, let's be clear here. This is what we can talk about this, and this is what we can't talk
Yeah.
about. Yeah, so yeah, it's I don't know. I'm very appreciative of that work you're doing. In fact, I think it's yes, I think it kind of gets into the next question I have here because it's like the subject matter of the book, right? Like this book is such a beautiful hybrid, I think, of like form and content. You've got a form, the Gothic,
Hmm.
right? That is a 19th century form. Like we're going back into this sort of like Eldridge centuries past, right? I mean, if you want to talk about you want to talk about like the Southern Gothics of the late 19th, early 20th century, if you want to talk about Sunset Boulevard, which I think we should in relation
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this book,
yeah, yeah.
we totally can. But then you've also got like influencers on the platform, otherwise known as
Hmm.
TikTok. Um, and so I call this book an influencer gothic. And I really I kind of want to get into this, like the mechanics of this subgenre. The way the house is said to act upon its female residents, I mean, perhaps even trapping them invites plenty of comparisons from history and fiction. Sunset Boulevard, like I just said, the other one I thought of was Whatever Happened to Baby J.
Uh-huh.
Uh, um, and then you mentioned, and I thought this was just like so excellent and fascinating. You mentioned Big and Little Edie in your kind of
Yes.
postscript to the. Yes, so
Yeah, yeah.
Grey Gardens, folks. If you haven't seen them, you gotta watch Grey Gardens. And then Brittany Murphy's. I hadn't thought about this in forever. It was very disturbing casting of Brittany Murphy while living with the writer Simon Monjack. What influenced your choice to make this a gothic, like a gothic, but with such contemporary kind of, for lack of a better term, content? And how did you manage to update that form for 2025 TikTok?
So the seed of this book started in a class that I took on the novel Rebecca in 2020, which I'd never previously read. I know this is a big favorite, but I'd never read it before. And I was taking this class on Rebecca. And as the teacher started talking about what are the features that make up a Gothic novel, I was like, oh, so the thing I've been obsessed with my whole life. Like I didn't even realize that that was one of my obsessions, but like the before we had the Gothic novel, we had the French fairy tale Bluebeard, which is about this wealthy aristocrat who marries a new bride and he goes away for the weekend. He says, you can go in any room in my castle you want except this one room. So, of course, her curiosity leads her to go to that one room where she finds the corpses of the brides who came before her. So, this idea of this big mansion owned by this scary older man who's keeping secrets from her is the precedent for Jane Eyre, for Rebecca, and then I see these like contemporary real life parallels to Brittany and her husband Simon, who lied to her. You can watch a documentary about Brittany Murphy. It's a tragic death, but she shouldn't have died. I mean, she died of like pneumonia, but they found all these other drugs in her system. It's a really tragic story. And then the husband is a liar, and then he dies of a brain tumor. It's like a Tennessee Williams play. Tennessee Williams, another one of my obsessions, my longtime obsessions. Self-care started out as a retelling of the yellow wallpaper. So it's like I've been trying to write a gothic novel like over and over again for many years. And so this is my final it's what we were talking about a minute ago. It's like sketching. It's like I was trying to sketch a gothic novel for a long time before I finally figured out how to write one. But in this class, the teacher said it's hard to write a contemporary gothic because you need a reason the woman stays inside the house. And when she said that, I remembered this Taylor Lorenz reporting in the New York Times about a real LA hype house. And I realized that's where I can set my contemporary Gothic. So it was the fusion of those two things that inspired the book. But it was a lot of fun and a challenge, I would say, to think about which Gothic tropes I was going to put in the novels. Because if you're working in a certain lane like the Gothic, or like satire, your reader's coming to the book with certain expectations. So you want to fulfill certain expectations. So I needed a crumbling mansion. I needed this kind of dangerous, alluring older man with secrets. There are other tropes in here that I won't spoil because it'll kind of spoil the ending, but there are other things that happen that you'll recognize from a Gothic. But I also because I have an inner rebel inside me, I also wanted to subvert some expectations. So while there is an alluring older man with secrets, I am writing a book about fears of aging. So the twist at the end has
Mm,
to do with who really has the power in a culture where we so value youth as we do in America.
mm. I love that. I mean, I certainly need to go watch the Brittany Murphy documentary. It was fun. I was like finishing your book on a plane, and then I looked over. I swear to God, I looked over, Leigh, and I was like, well, there's Brittany Murphy in Clueless. It just cut
Oh
from
my
Cher
God.
Horowitz's face to her face, and I was like, ah, like if you're seeing this, Raphael, it's meant for you. So,
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta watch the documentary. But like just a couple things, right? Like I think what really speaks to me about this book, is not just the way in which like you're kind of both using and subverting the tropes of the Gothic novel, but you're also talking about um, just like broadly speaking, the experience of being a woman trapped in a house, right? And I keep coming back
Hmm.
to gender, but I think that like when we're talking about social media, especially, and the kind of the wormhole of content creation that these influencers are getting sucked into, right? Where it's like you're young and you're powerful, as you just said, right? Like it is youth culture. You are the one who's being pitched to. You are the one who could kind of hold court here on the in the digital
Hmm.
world. Same time, you're also like it's this sort of almost like the red ballet shoes, right? Or maybe you're even getting sucked into the mirror, right? That's complimenting you on your beauty. You dance and dance and dance, and that you kind of I don't know. It's you can kind of wither as a result. And I think I love so much the way this book talks about how one can be trapped not just by the house but by one's worship of what the house stands for, like worship of a bygone era, worship of youth, worship of being seen. The house feels like, even though you're not talking about it literally as such, it feels like a hall of mirrors. Because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah, I should say more to your question about the house specifically. So I learned while my book is set in a mansion that's inspired by this real Frank Lloyd Wright mansion in California,
mm,
in Los Angeles, called the Ennis House, that was built in the 1920s, and it really did start crumbling and falling apart. So in my novel, I found photos on the internet of the house like falling down the hill and vines are growing through it. I was like obsessed with these photos. But I also learned through my research that Frank Lloyd Wright had this technique called compression and release. So he designed his homes to kind of move you through these claustrophobic narrow hallways, and then you would come to this big, beautiful living room with vaulted ceilings, and you would just feel this sense of like relief and awe. So that became like a central metaphor for the algorithm of TikTok, that it's kind of directing the
mm,
characters in the book to create certain content. And it's also there are certain characters in the book that feel its presence more than others. So this is like it's
mm,
a combination of like my me being influenced by Shirley Jackson and other gothic novelists I really like. So it's like the Shirley
of
Jackson
course.
influence and understanding of TikTok, that certain characters are feeling the house make them do things they wouldn't normally do. And I think that is
Yeah.
true of TikTok. Like when I've gone viral, going viral on TikTok is the most destabilizing experience. Like I become a completely deranged person when I go viral. It's terrible. Like, and I had to block, like I'll get into situations where I'm like, I've got to block someone because like I can't spend 72 hours just like inside this like cursed mansion of my own mind. It's like,
Man.
um,
Whoa. Yeah. I thank you for doing that for thank you for your service. I will never go on that platform, and I will never and now I'm even less tempted to. Yeah, it just whew, we'll get into I think that particular wormhole, but the other thing I wanted to say was I haven't read the Taylor Lorenz piece. I had read a piece. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he wrote a piece of like a long form piece on a hype on an LA hype house called The
Barrett
Anxiety of
Swanson and Harper's.
Yes, The Anxiety of
I read that as I
Influencers.
was writing this. I thought it was excellent. That's
I
the
thought it was
closest I
excellent
came to
too.
like going to a hype house. I read Barrett Swanson's piece on it.
Yes, Barrett. Okay, yeah, Barrett Swan. And I hadn't read anything by him before. I was like, oh, thank you, Barrett Swanson. But I read that a while ago, and I was just like, this is if we're kind of talking about like coercion, right? And coercion from unlikely places. So, I'm not surprised. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm not surprised to hear that the Prairie School and
Wait.
Mr.
I'm
Frank
from
Lloyd Wright.
Lombard.
Oh, I'm from well, like Libertyville, Grays
Oh,
Lake,
okay.
Gurney area. Yeah, northwest. Yeah,
North.
that's
Okay,
right.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, so we have seen Frank Lloyd Wright, we have seen Mies van der Rohe, right? These are kind of this is architecture that is like you're gonna have an experience of me, and I've never been a big prairie school person, but I think for that reason, but I the compression release concept is just so accurate, especially when you think about how TikTok works, where it's like you think that you are in the driver's seat, or you feel that,
Right.
or to some extent you kind of are, what I mean? I'm not saying that you're totally being puppeted, but it's not, I think you kind of like there's a little bit more of an illusion of autonomy than there is actual autonomy because these kids are being compressed and released when it comes
Yeah.
to the content production. And yeah, I don't know. God, I think that's such an accurate metaphor. Like,
Well, thank you.
yeah, thank you. What am I? I'm thinking of. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a book that does something really, really similar. I'm blanking on the title, but I'm thinking of another book about like, go west, young woman. Start modeling on Instagram, and you're going to like start,
Is it
like
the movie
get really
Ingrid
famous.
Goes West or it's a book?
It's not. No,
Okay,
it's that's
okay.
just me saying go west, young woman. I'm gonna look it up as we're talking,
Okay,
but
okay, okay.
I want to get into this idea a bit of what's being sold to Zoomers as like an entrepreneurial path, and it's really actually just a very coercive one. I think it's kind of like getting to.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, here's a generational question. The Deckler Hype House brings Gen Xers, millennials, and Zoomers together under a single roof. In other words, it's a living situation well designed to combust. And you, Leigh, we've established that we are really both millennials. You are, someone who like in writing this, right, is using a very distinct kind of like I grew up online in the aughts lens to tell a very like just I think multi-layered and nuanced story about what this generational clash would look like, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm really curious coming from, your point of view, writing a text like this, how did you were you juggling all those generations in a single narrative and what did you kind of what were you thinking as you were writing about
I just find like the differences between the generations endlessly fascinating. I think some people don't think about this at all. Like some people would say like, "Well, I don't even know what generation I am." And I'm like, "How could you not know what like isn't that the core of your identity?" Like I
that?
think so much drama that I see play out on the internet when you reduce it to its bare essentials, I'm like, "Oh, it's like a generational clash." It's like
Right.
Gen Z saying X and like Xers or millennials saying Y and it's also as a satirist, I just am like, I just have an irony radar, and I just think it's so funny that millennials like mock Gen Z for being ineffective, unable to pick up the phone or send an email, like unable to leave their house, like they're so powerless. Like, what's wrong with Gen Z? They can't do anything. And at the same time, it's like we want to pay attention to the new Sabrina Carpenter album, and we want to make sure that our jeans are like sitting at the right place on our waistline so we won't be made fun of. So it's like we're self-conscious and we want their approval at the same time that we denigrate them. So that irony was like definitely part of the inspiration for the book. And I felt like I should juxtapose Dana. That obviously Dana was the most comfortable character for me to write. She's closest to my age, but to juxtapose her with this 19-year-old newcomer to the house, who I tried or I think has a much more earnest voice. She has a sad backstory. Um, she's looking for something real. So the 19-year-old shows up at the house because this missing tarot card influencer the 19-year-old thinks that this missing tarot card influencer has a direct channel to her deceased parents, and she's really looking for a message and closure and forgiveness through this channel of this tarot card reader. And so I just thought it'd be interesting to juxtapose a 39-year-old who's filled with bitterness and regret and frustration that she has to learn all this new technology to stay relevant with a 19-year-old who's not having it any easier at all. It's not like when you're 19, you have
Right.
such an easy time in the world. It's hard to be 19. She's awkward and
Yeah.
insecure, but they can't understand each other. So it's that misunderstanding, that miscommunication that I was thinking about as I juxtaposed those two points of view.
It totally comes through. And I think, speaking of subversion, but one of the things I love so much about the 19-year-old is that she's actually like more analog in some ways than the 39-year-old. Like she's kind
That's
of like my
interesting.
points of reference are, the Brontes, right? Like I'm such an excellent student, and like I care about like the 19th century marriage plot. I care. I'm very like super just like ultra literate, and like deeply well spoken, and not in the go west young woman mental space, like, right, she's not like I could like become so rich as an influencer that I could start my own venture capital fund. That's not what she's doing. She's going to this house because
Yeah.
of the tarot influencer, right? So it's a more personal experience, whereas like the 39-year-old Dana is more, it's more of a career move, right? It's more of
She's
a
more of a girl
stay relevant.
boss.
She's in fact, she says to Owen Wilson, doesn't she, mommy is a girl boss,
Yeah,
which was one
mommy's a
of
girl
my
boss now.
favorite
That's so
my
funny.
favorite moment
But
in
I'm
the
curious
book.
in your experience as a professor, because when I do these interviews, I have to like, I feel like I have to stand up for Gen Z. A lot, like Gen Z gets like
Yeah.
so negatively stereotyped. And in my experience, I have definitely met Gen Z content creators who are talking about using phones or tech intentionally, who are talking about putting their
Hmm.
phones down to
Oh
read
yeah.
classic literature. And I'm
Oh my
wondering, in
God,
your
yeah.
experience as a professor, do you see young students who are really kind of aware of phone addiction or internet addiction who are trying to intentionally, prioritize their focus or their time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I saw that in fact when I was kind of like actively professoring, i.e., like I am at the front of the class. I'm a, whatever, tenured faculty member here, and there's this kind of imply. I mean, there's a power differential. It's a little bit harder to be like, hey, I see that you're on your phone in the moments before class. What do you think about the attention economy? Like, that's not a
Right,
conversation
right, of
that I'm
course,
having
of
as
course.
often. But I think it's something that's maybe easier to have with grad students. But then I think broadly, right, when I left the academy and was having these more candid conversations with members of Gen Z, 100%. I think younger folks, I think kids are really very aware of how like this is like the pitch to effect, right? Like of how
Yeah,
what seems to be like a social movement, right? Or a like I can enrich myself is kind of ending up to being another Ponzi scheme, another MLM, another, like coercion. And actually I thought of a book. It's Ali Rowbottom's Aesthetic.
oh, Aesthetica. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. I love that book. And I thought like that plot where the young woman's like, okay, like I'm gonna help my mom, like my mom is sick, like my dad's out of the
yeah,
picture. I'm gonna be a famous model. And she's kind of shown the pretty dark side of what it is to be an Instagram model. And I think a lot of kids, I would say, are like extremely aware of that, and getting tired of the like life is only online, life is only in my hand, it's only in my pocket, I've seen almost nothing but that. And again,
yeah.
do not have the trendy Sabrina Carpenter jeans, and I only participate in the Carpenter Peace Industrial Complex as an eager consumer because I love Sabrina Carpenter, and so I just read this stuff, but I'm not coming across as very hip, maybe just weird. So they're like, well, she's not going to talk like
But
cool
I
shit.
just
Maybe I
think
should talk about how books are made.
I think we should give like young adults more credit for like thinking about this stuff. Like they do think
Oh
about this
God,
stuff. They aren't
yeah.
mindless. And I even while I was writing the book, I had a Zoom meet. I had a like a publishing like informational interview with a young 20 something guy. And during this, he told me, he's like, I think millennials are way more addicted to their phone than my generation. And I was like, fair point. Like, is it millennials? Are we the ones that have the problem, but we're projecting the addiction like onto young adults?
Well, and then not to pass the buck, but look how captured like our parents are.
Yeah.
And like Nathan Hill has a whole amazing section in wellness, the need to user algorithm.
Obsessed.
Obsessed.
Obsessed with Nathan
Everyone's
Hill, obsessed with
yeah.
that passage in Wellness. So brilliant.
We shoot him an email. I've been shooting him emails to come on the show, but he's going to SIU next spring. So
You have
like
to get him on the show.
I want to get him on the show. He just was talking about wellness so much. I'll send you the. I don't know. We'll mount a campaign. He'll come on the show.
Okay.
Um, but that book is so amazing, right? Because it for a billion reasons, but also because it really talks about how um like an older, like a boomer, like a very old boomer gets hooked, very viciously hooked by Facebook.
But it's
Like,
the way he writes it. It's so slow and gradual, and it's so human. Like you
yeah.
so sympathize with that father,
Oh, yes.
and then you
Yes.
watch what happens to him.
Yes. See, Lee, this is what, and this is why I love your work so much too, is because we are not moralizing. There, like, it's wild to me that, like, understanding the scrolling as a dopaminergic situation, why on earth would you moralize around that, but then be like, oh gosh, I feel bad. This someone has been hooked by heroin. That's a devastating situation. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, don't compare this to drug addiction. Well, but it is
yeah.
dopaminergic.
That's
And why does
interesting.
it, you know what I mean? Like, not to make it sound like so extreme, but I think the fact that like it's going back to the, oh, this is only frivolous. This could only be frivolous and it could only be narcissistic.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
yeah.
I don't know.
And I think you put that really well. And in terms of like comparing my two books, I think Self-Care is a funnier, meaner satire. And I think this TikTok novel, from what I've heard from other readers, it's still funny, but it's
Mhm.
not as scathing as Self-Care was because
Mm.
I think I end up empathizing with by writing it, by becoming a content creator on TikTok and writing this book. I do have more empathy, I think, for content creators than for the wellness influencers that I mock in Self-Care. It's like I've even gone on a journey
Sure.
um, myself.
Hashtag journey. You know, yeah.
I'm going west. Yeah.
You know, you're going left, young woman. No, but yeah, I'm so excited to get into the details of that too. I know I have a question about that, but I want to go back to the young influencers for a moment. Morgan, Piper, and Becca, right? You know, kind of the like body positivity, the standard sort of TikTok, very pretty girl, and the tarot influencer. I've seen those influencers. I haven't even been on TikTok, but I've seen. Well, I downloaded the app and I was like, I'm too old to work this. This is scary. So I deleted it. Um, but I've seen them on Instagram, right? I've seen them online, and I hadn't seen someone like Jake Cho, right? So Jake is the character, the Dustin Hoffman, the young man in the selection you read, and he's essentially camming without camming, right? I mean, Dana makes that point. You like sent me an incredible inverse article about the influencer this guy is based on. I'm so curious, not like how you found this guy and what it was like actually to take a deep dive into TikTok and find these different types of influencers.
So this Jake is based on a real Canadian influencer named William White, who went viral at the age 19. This is very like I feel like this relates to the outfit that you're wearing. Like so, the real influencer William, he goes
Oh boy.
viral for lip syncing to Barry Manilow's "Mandy" for 7 seconds and then winking at the end of 7 seconds. That's it.
Oh,
This goes viral. It starts this like rabid
does
fandom
relate to my
of middle-aged women who remember the song. So all his content is geared
uh,
around things that they're nostalgic for that remind them when they were 19. And his fandom, like there's a hashtag associated with his fandom. It's in the back of my book. It's a hit Easter egg if you want to find it. But you can search this hashtag. I searched this hashtag. There's a woman probably in her late 50s, early 60s, just wearing her bra, just dancing like to one of his videos. Like it is erotic. It is fascinating. I would like watch his live streams with my husband and we would just like watch the comments come in. Like they're so into him. He's the age, he could be their son. They're so into him.
mm,
He's very polite and nice. He appreciates what they've done for him. But this article was basically about how it's about parasocial fandom and how parasocial
mm,
fandom can breed entitlement because what if you send Christmas gifts to him or what if you send him an allowance and he doesn't appropriately
mm,
thank you in your opinion? Do you show up at his house?
mm,
Do you start a campaign? Do you say something publicly? So all this drama surrounding whether or not he was grateful enough for everything that these women were doing for him. So this was just like catnip for me for the book. So that's the inspiration for Jake. Um, yeah, I just find it really fascinating.
it's wild how there's like kind of skipping over my resemblance to Barry Manilow, which we could circle back to later. But it's like wildly how the TikTok stuff is, it is like a Hollywood microclimate because of course, in like traditional, like silver screen, whatever A-listers have stalkers. Like there's like parasocial stuff that's been happening since time immemorial, and it's the way that TikTok speeds this up, and then also creates these little pockets of it, right? Because like this young William White has this huge fandom, but also if I'm not on TikTok, right, maybe I wouldn't know about it. But of course, like I don't have to see every Jennifer Aniston movie to know that this is a woman who has many fans. And so it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me how it's almost like a mini Hollywood. It's like a
Yes.
smaller, you know, I said in my outfit. Like it's just it's just such a I mean, I wonder if you could speak to that too, like what parallels you found with like big and small forms of celebrity on TikTok.
Well, I think you and I remember like when we were growing up, you would hear on MTV or you would read in a magazine, like this starlet was discovered at the mall with her mom, and a
Yes.
talent scout said, "Have you ever thought about acting before?" Well,
Tiger Beat.
now
Yeah.
Tiger Beat.
Yeah.
Now these young adults are being discovered through TikTok, and it's interesting to think
Mm,
about this. This is for and the entertainment industry, but it's true also for the writing industry. Writers don't like when I talk about this, but it's true that if you can build an audience, if you can use one of these platforms like Substack or TikTok to build an audience, people will pay attention. Talent scouts, literary agents,
it's
managers
true.
will pay attention. They'll say, "Do you want to
Sure.
go on a paid tour? Do you want to write a book?" Eli Rallo
Yeah.
is a Gen Z essayist who got discovered because of her TikTok account. And so
Wow.
it's like the pipeline has changed where now someone like Addison Rae starts in a hype house. She makes 7 dance videos a day. And now she's like the next Britney Spears. She's on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. So she put in that work. This is also why I have respect for content creators. Like she really put in the
Sure.
work to make herself. And now she has an entertainment career.
It's got, I mean, I'm thinking too of like the like Rain Fisher Kwan, who I only found out about through, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't like, oh my God, yes, my favorite Disney star's best friend or Nick,
Right,
on,
right.
but I saw her on Substack and I found out through Gen Z Substackers. I was like, wow, okay, like this is a phenomenon,
And I
whereas
think
like,
she started on
yeah,
Twitter too. I think she built a big fandom on Twitter and then she kind of
okay,
ported that over to Substack. But yeah, she's so young
sure.
and and she's a prolific writer.
No,
That's the
she
other thing.
is. Yeah.
That's the other thing that I think is disheartening to writers. It's like the speed and velocity right now of creating content, whether that's TikTok or Substack essays. Like Rain writes so much. Um,
Yeah.
it's really the bar. I feel like the bar has been raised for what we have
But
to
I think
create and produce.
totally, and I think like, well, I mean, see, you're more the expert on this. Like, I'm sorry to compare myself to Britney Spears. I'm Britney Spears' backup dancer in the malls in the 90s, in the like
Yeah, yeah.
Woodfield Mall, being like, hey, like that's how I was. Like, I guess like I got my agent through a story on like Granta or so. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I was discovered, old school way. Um,
I love that
but
though. You were discovered by putting work out there.
yeah, but exactly. That's what I was gonna say. It's the exact same thing, right? It's
Yes.
like, yes, it was an online publication, and just because yada yada, it wasn't my specific Substack, right? It's like
But that
Substack
was the
wasn't around at that point.
2010s, I
It
imagine.
was. It was the
Yeah.
2010s. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And now
This
all
is
those digital publications are gone. Like Britt Bennett, the novelist, she sold
yeah.
her first novel because she had a piece go viral in Jezebel.
I remember the very piece. I remember the
Yeah.
very yeah. No, totally. And see, it's like yeah. This is God. This is its own kind of, I think, very fruitful wormhole if we were to go down it, because like the way people like get found or get discovered, it's changed. It's and but it doesn't mean that's a bad. I think like it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. I feel like there are good and bad things about all of it, right? Like there are things that are simpler and maybe more manageable about dancing
Yeah.
in the Woodfield Mall with your best friend Britney Spears, but
Right.
but like there's also downsides to that, just like there are upsides and downsides to, hey, I have a big Twitter following or what, like I don't know. I'm
I
trying
think you're
because
right.
I
I think,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's become like as the internet has made it more democratized, like it's easier for
Yes.
certain voices to break through, but it makes other people angry. And it's like, well, what do you want? You want more gatekeepers? Like you
What?
want to go back to,
Right.
so
Well,
it's
and
trade-offs.
I think my question is, we don't have to answer this, but who's angry? Who's mad?
Writers are mad. Writers are mad.
Writers are mad.
Writers writers are mad because they don't want to adapt and they wish things could go back to this magical time. I don't know when this magical time is, like 1996. There's this imaginary before time when publishers made books and writers didn't have to do anything. But I always
Mm,
think like, but how many like let's take Ann Patchett. How many debuts came out the same year as Ann Patchett and they just never became Ann
I
Patchett?
just
Like it's always been true that people don't write the next book is a flop. You know,
right.
certain people are always going to rise. So we see who has the long careers. We see Margaret Atwood, we see Ann Patchett, we see Stephen King, and we tell ourselves, well, they're successful because their publishers made them, and why can't my publisher make me? But I just don't know if that's a true story.
I don't, yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Because, like, I understand people being like, oh my God, there's no publicity budget. I have to do everything. And that feels heavy. I get that totally. But I think there's an in between, right? Because I don't know, I was raised, I was, I was raised by people who worshipped I go on the Johnny Carson show era of
Totally.
like Philip Roth and Gore Vidal. Like I was raised, not my parents didn't literally worship, but like my MFA advisors, instructors were young kids watching that happen and really admiring it. And then I
Yeah.
put a first book out and like they're like, yeah, you're really good at whatever. And I was like, okay, all I do is I just quietly wait here for someone to acknowledge my big
You wait for
special
the call.
brilliance.
Yeah, you wait for
Yeah,
the
I
call.
wait for the call. Someone's like, it's me. It's late night, whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's not how things work. And like my first book just totally did not sell any copies. And I actually I wrote about it for in fact for the Substack, and it was kind of this wild full circle, Lee, because I was like, oh, I now realize, right, that like it's beautiful to bring like creative passion and excitement and plenty of people are so intensely talented and write gorgeous sentences, but it's
Yeah.
also about like being in the world, and you can be in the world in whatever way feels good, but it is like human connection, it's that personal kind of like what's going on for you in addition. And if we were to go back to the Johnny Carson show era, they are going on the friggin' Johnny Carson. So it's not as if they're
Yeah.
just sitting, they're just like, here's my genius. Bye.
Right.
There were the feuds and there's all that
Well,
crazy stuff.
I often think about the distinction between writing and being a writer. Because when I'm writing, I'm
There
not
it
on
is.
TikTok. I've got to
No.
be in my zone. But right now, you see
Right.
me being a writer. And like my writing group is meeting on Saturday. Do I have any pages for my writing group? I do not have any pages. I'm not in the writing zone right now. I'm in the being a writer zone where I'm just like in
Sure.
public a lot. It's a different kind of energy. And I think the writers that succeed, look at Ann Patchett. I mean, Ann Patchett is making TikTok
Yeah.
videos from Parnassus. That's what she does. Um, the successful
Okay.
writers are the ones
I'm
that can
buying that
figure out
juice cleanse. Yeah. Sorry.
juice cleanses from Ann Patchett, Parnassus
I would buy.
subscription juice cleanse business. Um,
Just
I
saying,
think
Anne.
to make it, if you want this to be your career, and if writing is just a hobby, that's a different question. But if you want to make a
Sure.
living writing, if you want this to be your career, I think you have to figure out how can I be both a writer and how can I be a writer in public and also write in private.
So it's wild because I was having this exact conversation with Dan Sean, who did come on this Podstack,
Another
Nathan
one of my
Hill.
favorites. I'm
Oh
obsessed
my
with Dan
God.
Sean. Obsessed.
And come to Vancouver, Washington. I'm giving a reading with him in October.
Gladly.
Uh, thank you. But he's incredible. And I was in like this kind of like sad spot because there is a tension, Lee. I know you have spoken about this and on your Substack, in fact, and very eloquently, I would add about like there can be a sadness that comes from the disjunct between being a writer and writing, right? Being a writer and I'm just speaking for myself, but I know there are many who have this in common. Being a writer can feel draining. Like it is
Hmm.
just like that kind of, I'm doing a public persona, or I'm making myself vulnerable, or I feel lonely as I'm touring, all that jazz. Whereas I'm at my computer and I'm kind of lost in this really exciting, imaginary world. That feels amazing, right? And so that disjunct is challenging. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate the way you've addressed in your
Well, thank
interviews and
you.
stuff too. Yeah, seriously. And in fact, for those who have not, I'm going to get back to our normal questions. This is a huge divergence, but for those who have not tuned into attention economy, how like how would you say, Lee, that kind of tension can be addressed in the life of a writer?
Ooh, that's such a
It's a
good
tough
question.
one.
I'm trying to think where I've written about this previously and what I've said previously. Um, well, one thing I'll say is like we started this conversation by me talking about being on LiveJournal as a teenage girl. Like I've always written
Right.
for an audience. So I don't journal, I don't have a diary, I don't have a private writing practice, I don't do morning pages. I have always written to be read. So even when I'm in that like alone flow state, juicy place where like ideas are cooking and I'm writing, I'm like so excited for when someone's going to read it. Even if that's my writing group, I can get like so excited,
Sure.
like they're reading this chapter, and I always go in feeling like I'm a genius. And then they give me notes, and I'm like, you're right. Um,
You're right. I love
but
that.
sharing, I started as a poet, like even writing a poem to one friend and emailing it to one friend and then saying like, I love this line. That to me, that's like the greatest dopamine hit. Like that is, I
Sure.
love that. So I'm always in dialogue. I'm always wanting to write to be read. So that's, I think, part of what makes it more comfortable for me. So it's not like a leap for me to, it's like some people write and write. Some people go through MFA programs, they write and write and write, and they never try to publish. Like the publishing is so scary to them. That's such a hurdle.
Sure.
And maybe they don't need to publish. Maybe writing is a practice that they do for themselves. You know, I
Hmm.
think I think if you want to be a book coach or an editor and make a gazillion dollars, you should just lead like writing retreats for personal development. Like teaching writing as like self-help
Thank you.
is like the most lucrative business. Like I think you could make a
Sure.
killing. And so many people do. That's what they do.
Absolutely.
But I think my specialty and my niche on Substack is I'm really speaking to an audience of writers that are like, how do I make this my career? Like, how do I become known as a professional writer? How do I make a living at this? And to make a living at this, you have to sell books. And then once you sell the book, it's like, well, then how do you get readers to actually buy the book? So these are the
Yeah.
kind of problems that I'm solving for my audience. I think there's a lot of writing advice out there that's like how to query. So there's like a lot for beginners, but there's
Yeah.
not as much for like mid-career authors that have maybe done one or two books and maybe they're trying to find a new agent or maybe their editor left the industry. It's like there's all these like WTF moments in the career of a writer. So I'm trying to speak to those people that are just looking. I think writers are just looking for someone to be honest and candid with them.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. I mean, that's what some much of your advice, I think, that's really landed with me has been that kind of like mid-career, like, oh, like, okay, I've gotten over the speaking again just for myself, but the hump of that preciousness, right? Of like, oh, I will get the call, right? And how do I kind of be in the world and of the world, right? And like, what is this career and what do I want? In fact, I'm talking with another like a great Substack friend about like writing and desire. We're doing an interview on Tuesday, but like, what is it about like now that I've kind of professionalized enough that I have books out, like what is it that I want from this? Like, what am I trying to get? Of
Mm,
course, you're trying to kind of meet that baseline of like, hey, yes, I would love to have this as a career. Totally. Practical considerations there. But then after that, right? Like, what do I want to kind of bring into the world? Like, who do I want to connect with? And I feel like those questions are so helpful to kind of, just get thinking about. I've been thinking about that increasingly as well. It's so easy to, like, I'll shift into a scarcity spot and I'll be like, oh no, I've got to solve XYZ problem and I kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. And so, yeah, it's your Substack and her Substack have certainly been very helpful for those reasons
I
as
think
well.
I think those are really smart questions. And I would just add like, you know, as much as I look, I mean, I think to some people I do look like such a girl boss because I do like talk so much about marketing. I find marketing to be fun, but like I am also
You've
like
got great
as
nails. You talk about marketing. Yeah.
I am also challenging myself as an artist with each book I wrote. Like self-care, I learned
Sure.
how to write a satire, and this one I'm like learning how to write a gothic. So it is
Mm,
satisfying to me to learn something as an artist, but I also am fulfilled by I do enjoy the business side. You know, like when I was a child, I
sure.
would play school with my friends, but I could only be the teacher. They weren't allowed to be the teacher, and I would play business. Like I'm just the same child. I'm just the same person in a grown-up body. Like this has always been fun for me.
Oh man, I had a similar habit as a kid. My wife really makes fun of me for it, and deservedly so. But no, yeah, these are such valuable questions and things to be considering. Because here's the last thing I'll say on this, because the thing I found missing from the MFA just like the professionalization aspect of the MFA program was, in addition to everything, was the like the how one bridges the gap, right, between like, hey, I sold the book and the book is out, to okay, I am doing this in the world. And practical aspects of that, also like emotional and like philosophical aspects
Yeah.
of that. Like there's all of that is just like missing. It's like, well, you'll it's the Kurt Vonnegut bullshit. It's like, well, only two of you will succeed, and then you'll be the great writers. Yes, that is a speech you gave to the Iowa Writers Workshop. If
Wait,
Harvard
Kurt Vonnegut
Kurt
gave that
Vonnegut,
speech?
yes, he did. He said, Leigh, he said, if Harvard Medical School only graduated two successful doctors a year, they would go out of business. We only graduate two successful writers a year, but of course, this is just the nature of writing. Kurt Vonnegut gave that speech. Isn't that wild? That he, if you
That's
like
the
to high
most depressing,
schoolers,
but that's the most depressing thing you could say.
I know, I know. And consider he's like writing to high schoolers being like, chase your dreams. Oh my God, and the big cosmos is open to you. And to the MFAs, he's like, fuck you. Only two of you are ever going to get
I
anything.
didn't know that
Bye.
lore. That lore has been swallowed
Yeah,
because it isn't inspirational.
exactly. And,
So
and he was
interesting.
also a kind of like direct to paperback sci-fi writer with several books out of print when he got the call to come teach at Iowa because Lowell. Oh yeah, I know he remade himself. Vonnegut remade himself for Iowa.
Oh, he was in
Fun
a
fact.
lull when he gave this speech.
He was in a well, no, no. When he gave that speech, he was Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But when
He
he got
had his big
hired,
hits.
yes. Oh, yeah. This was post Slaughterhouse Five. This is post all of that. But when he got hired at Iowa, in fact, if we're talking about like remaking yourself and content and doing the metrics, he was like, okay, like let's go. I got to do like a literary sci-fi hybrid. He made himself into Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, so he had these like pulp novels that I've never read.
Yes, yes. He had these
That's
folk
so
novels that you and I
interesting.
have never read. Yes, and many children. And he was like in whatever New Hampshire. Yeah, isn't that insane?
It's so interesting.
Ugh, I think about this often. Anyway,
Well, I feel like that's a fruitful topic to think about is like, what are those pivot moments that we don't hear about? Because it's like
uh,
when a brand becomes strong, like Kurt Vonnegut's brand is so strong, I just think of
is very
Slaughterhouse
strong.
Five or whatever, or I think about
Yeah.
his plot drawings. Isn't he
Uh,
famous for those like squiggles?
yes, he is. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, to think about pivots along the way and failures, pivots and failures.
Very valuable. Like it's like this guy is like 20th century man of letters, literary guru, and he had failed. He was a career in the Cormac McCarthy way, right? Like books out of
Yeah,
print, but we don't know about that because he got the right phone call.
right.
Ugh, anyway, 11:11, I'm sure Becca would want us to make a wish. Leigh, I wish that you would answer this question.
Okay.
Um, Given the themes of this book and self-care, thank you for granting my wish immediately. You've established yourself as like something of a novelist of the internet. And given, kind of what I've said earlier, right? Like this is something we really need. We need novelists of the internet writing about like what's actually going on as opposed to this is all good, this is all bad. Um, how or like what do you feel you've been able to capture in fiction that's been missing from the kind of like reams of journalism, not to throw Taylor Lorenz under the bus at all, but like that is the kind of reportage that we see. It's very like, whoa, it's tension grabbing, but it's between that and the kind of like internet commentariat, right? Of like, you know, this is what's happening on Twitter, or this is what's happening on Instagram. I feel like there's a lot missing. And I feel like you do
Mm.
capture a lot of it in this book in self-care as well. So can you speak more to what you've been able to capture in the novel?
Yeah, I think like with news articles and opinion pieces, and even with like a polemic like the Jonathan Haidt book about what the phones are doing to young people, um, it's like it's not creating a document of what it's like to live on the internet. Like what is the embodied experience of like scrolling, like or of creating content. So I'm trying to that's why I've chosen the novel as my vehicle. It's like I'm trying to write about the human experience of being online. And so it's very gratifying to me when a reader reads something in one of my novels and is like, "Oh my God, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I didn't know how to describe it before." So it's like putting language to an experience. Um, the other thing that's been so gratifying about this new book is hearing from TikTok content creators that are like, Leigh nailed what it's like. Like, that's the highest compliment. Like, people with much bigger accounts than me, if they feel like I captured something about what their experience is like, because for everything's moving so fast and it's so ethereal and ephemeral. It's not, I once had a conversation with someone who said it's hard to write about the internet because it doesn't use the five senses. There's no like smell of the internet. There's no touch sensation of the internet. So it's like, but in a novel, you have to use the five senses. So that's what I feel like my life's project is like to try to document what it's like to be alive right now. And for so many people, being alive is on the internet. But that being said, I think this might be my last internet novel because I just don't know if readers want to read about the internet. Like, they're already so in it. Like, you don't go
Sure.
on TikTok and see them saying like, what I could really use right now is an internet novel. Like, they aren't craving that.
Yeah.
So I think this might be my last internet novel.
Bummer. But I get it. Um, and yeah, I love so much of what you just said. I think like for me right now, here's my old lit professor stuff coming out, but like the novel as a like a document or let's put it this way, the novel as a man like a way to transmit ideas, right? The novel of
Mm-hmm.
ideas from the 1990s
Mm-hmm.
folks and like that's like we're all kind of down on that now, right? Because it's so didactic, it's so this and that. But if you can have like a text that is not just engaging in like in it's a sensorium, right? Like it's like immersing you in a place and time with, certain cast of people, but it's also helping you understand something, right? It's also like kind of like a philosophical document. That's the best. And so, yeah, that's why I really loved your book is because I was like, this is like an ultra contemporary TikTok novel of ideas. Like
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like,
thank you.
yeah, it's
And
no, I mean, yeah.
when I started it, I was gonna call it Content Factory, and it was gonna be like Upton Sinclair. So I was gonna be like, I'm gonna be the muckraker of TikTok. It was all gonna be about labor, and like I was like, they're gonna organize. Like, I was just,
Oh my
but
God.
then when I started writing, it's like I don't have it's not a polemic. I'm not arguing for one side or the
Sure.
other. I hope I've created like I would love if like Gen X moms and Gen Z daughters would read it together. Like, I would love to just have
That's
people read
sweet.
it and have conversations about it, about their use of the internet. I'm not coming down hard on either pro or anti TikTok in this book.
Totally. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's why I love about it so much that it isn't a polemic, and the novel ideas does get, I think in many cases deservedly sort of slapped with that like ultra didactic kind of like polemical
Yeah.
label. Um, Although I would be a reader for Content Factory, I would be the person who would be like, oh my God, it's like Upton Sinclair TikTok, give me this. I was definitely like a 13-year-old girl who was like, this is the best book I've ever read. And so they were
Yeah.
like, who are you? Um,
There's a lot of
but
graphic details in that book. It's very
like, yes, Chicago suburbs, back of the yard.
Yeah, yeah,
Check
yeah.
it out. Yeah. But I think like the books that kind of hold that tension, right, where it's not like I am making a pronouncement, I'm kind of speaking from a position of authority, but there are some ideas in here that it's harder to get from, oh my God, the like hype house headline, inverse article. And so, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love the fact that, and I also love the fact that you do have the mom blogger and the Zoomer daughter in this book as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up because I do think about the labor of content creation, and I do think about children of these family vloggers, and I think about like, if we can't, how are we going to protect these children if we don't even see the work as labor? Like, the first step is to acknowledge that like this is labor, like those YouTube videos where the
Yes.
kids are and Ruby Frankie is another person I reference in my
Oh,
author's
you
note at the
do.
end. That is
Yeah,
so gothic. It is so
it
scary what
is.
happened in that family. But
Yes.
yeah, we have to think we're watching these families as if we're watching the, reality television. But the thing is, like, reality television, I'm using quotation marks, is now done by a lot of just like moms at home with their own families, and there's no protections around that in the same way there are protections around child actors in Hollywood.
I mean, it makes me think, of course, of the Duggars, right? And like,
Yeah.
I've thought, and I make this comment often, um, again to my wife who's probably tired of it, but I'm just like, just like TLC is like it is sort of like a kind of a human. It's the new sort of P.T. Barnum space. It's like it is a elaborate Stanford prison experiment, kind of like sociological experiment playing out without an international review board to determine if there are human rights violations taking place. So it's like I could just kind of
That's
plop
so
in,
interesting.
but it's like it's this is how the Duggars happens, right?
Yeah.
And so and this is how it came up with my wife because she grew up and her mom, they would watch that family, it's like a Christian large family,
Yeah.
and we were glued to our seats with the 3-part docuseries because we were like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
the behind the scenes, just like the Frankies. It's just
Yeah.
scary not only to think that there are no industry protections around that, but then, as you point out, I think so saliently, like there's none in the home. If I just point my
Right.
phone at my kids, like,
Right.
it's whoa. Like, yeah, that would be that would be kind of the really, really high horror novel version
Well, the other thing
of
I
the
think about a
Gothic.
lot is like, with the Jonathan Haidt Anxious Generation book and the conversations parents are having now and like, what should we do? What should we do? I'm like, I've been on the internet since 1997. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes, there's new platforms and things are changing all the time, but the fact that like Gen X parents are thinking about this as if it's like new, I mean,
yeah,
it's like I don't totally want to parent shame, but I also think like, well, what have you been thinking for 20 years? Like, I think we need
yeah.
to, maybe this is a wake up call, maybe, but it's just like, I find it very curious that people talk about social media, Instagram, and phones as if these are new technologies when they're not.
Right. Yeah. It's like no, this is and actually this is great because this ties into my very final question. Um, in addition to having grown up on the aughts internet, you've got a robust online presence now, including Substack, as we've said. And of course you had you have a TikTok residency, Leigh. You have like it's like a Vegas residency. Right? You're in TikTok now.
My Hive House.
And you have your yeah, you have your own hype house. Um, and so as a long-standing citizen and more recently, if briefly novelist of the internet, what are the changes in internet culture that have most surprised or interest you? Like, and that's kind of what we're getting at, right? Because if I'm thinking, I'm with you, I'm like, this is not new. But there have been changes, or there has been a speed. It does feel like there's been a speeding up, and maybe that's naive of me to
Yeah.
say. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, kind of like, yeah, tied with what we've been saying before. What do you think about that? Like, what's your
I think the thing that people need to understand right now about the internet we live on right now is that whether or not you're on TikTok, you need to understand that the TikTok algorithm changed the game for all social media platforms because TikTok's
Mhm.
algorithm shows your content to people who have liked similar content before, whether or not they follow you. And now Instagram is
Wow,
copying that.
wow,
So
wow.
we remember the time of like you and I were probably in college on Facebook, right? When you were followed by people you
Yes,
knew and they looked at your photo albums
yes.
of who was at the party last night or whatever. And I think
God, yeah.
Instagram might be similar, where like you're following someone you know, you're following your former student, you're following your former teacher, you're following other writers. But now you have to create content that the algorithm could show to a stranger and it would make sense to them. That's the only way that you're going to grow if that's your goal. If you're a writer and you want to grow your audience so that you can get an agent, so that you can get more money for your book, so that you can sell your book after your last book failed. Like these are all valid reasons to be thinking about building a platform. So this is kind of the philosophy I'm trying to teach my students in what I'm calling my hype house is like how do you create content that would be valuable and interesting to a total stranger? And I think there is an
Mm,
analog to writing books because if I write a book, it's not just for my mom who loves me and is going to love my books. You know what I mean?
well,
I'm
sure,
writing a
yeah,
book that I'm hoping like someone would pick up at Barnes and Noble in Wichita and it would mean something to her, even if she has no idea who I am. So in the same
right.
way, we have to think about what are we posting on the internet that is valuable. And you are creating content through these interviews and through your Substack that you're putting out this valuable content for writers and readers. And I think that's really successful and that's really great. But I think it's hard for it's a steep learning curve for some of my writers who are just used to posting like what they posted in 2010.
Yeah, no, I could, right. That, man. I mean, and what comes to mind too, and I'm going to change also this a bit, sorry. But what comes to mind too is, so if I'm say like a 17-year-old kid, right, scrolling her phone, in a very different position from like you or I. And it's like there's a way in which I can kind of, wanting to be seen and wanting external validation, literally everybody, anybody, like in high school especially. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. Like what I have to do, right, is present a version of myself that would make sense to someone who doesn't know me. I'm starting to think in the content creation terms in a way that might not serve me. And then ironically, right, the writer who needs to think in those terms, but who just wants to post like, hey, here I am, birds of, you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
20 times content,
Yeah.
that that person is more reluctant, but they would benefit from it. And so there's this kind of weird reversal, right? Where it's like, well, I want the 17-year-old kid though I want her world to be safe for her and appropriate for her, right? Like I'm not her
Yeah.
mom, but like ideally you don't want this kind of flip flop. And so I'm wondering, do you observe that happening, right? Where like kids are professionalizing in their lives and don't even realize it? Or maybe am I?
I think that's really poignant the way you put it. And I actually, I'll try to be vague in the details, but I was approached to work on a book project that was all about
Mhm.
how helping teenagers professionalize at a young age. And I said, I actually don't. And they were referred to me because of my novel Self-Care. They're like, Leigh loves the internet. This is
Oh,
so up Leigh's alley.
wow.
And I had to pass working on this because I just find that really disturbing because I
Wow.
just feel like
Yes.
let teens like be teens, like
Yes.
let them self-express, like let them make, funny I'm trying to think what content do I see from teens on TikTok. I don't want to follow a lot of teens. Did you see the trauma bowl, the candy bowl trend? Did you see that?
So here's the big reveal, Leigh. Here's the twist. I'm off everything except Substack.
Good
I
for
don't
you.
have
You're not
any
alone.
account.
You're not alone. But there
Wild
was this
story
meme
there, but
going
yeah.
around where I saw these girls in a car and they have a bowl and they would each open a
Yeah.
whole bag of candy. So they're making a candy salad, but it's like
Yeah.
trauma dumping. So one of them would be like, my dad left when I was 6, and they would do gummy bears and left. And then the next one would be like, my cousin's in jail. And then she poured in. So you're like laugh crying. To me, this is like so Gen Z humor.
Yes.
But they're just like dumping candy and dumping trauma. But it's that confluence of trauma and entertainment that's just so Gen Z to me. I don't know.
I mean, I think I so yeah, to be perfectly clear, I actually really loved the like deep fried irony, meta posting, the Gen Z online trends.
Yeah, yeah,
And I just want to share this because like this it's so easy to think that when I had friends who were like, oh, I'm off social media, I'd be like, oh, how nice for you. In fact, the reason I got off social media though, it was because I became in various areas of my life so swallowed up by the attention economy.
yeah,
So
yeah,
have yes, it's the addiction, dopamine issues. It's also, Leigh, I was going so kind of like intensely in the direction of I need external validation. I'll just be honest here. I was going so intensely like I need external validation. I feel self-conscious because I feel I've failed in these and these ways. And I got myself into a situation where I got stalkers, like criminal, vicious stalkers who were stalking me very intensely on I got off Twitter because Twitter sucks, mea culpa. But like Instagram and Facebook, I was being heavily stalked. And so
that's
I was
so
almost
scary.
pushed off. It was so scary. And if we're
Yeah,
talking about like the gothic, right? And the like,
yeah,
oh my God, who's in the mirror staring back at you? I had become someone who I felt like I'd failed, I think, in the traditional way, right? And then I was like, okay, I have to do X, Y, Z, IRL and online. It blew up in my face. Blew up in my face.
that's really scary.
So
And it is gothic because
yeah.
it's like, at least I feel like the internet's my home. Like I've lived here for so long. And so
Sure.
when you feel like your home has been violated or there's people inside it that you didn't invite, it's very
Yes.
destabilizing.
Yes, it was the call was coming from inside the house kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Oh man. Yeah. So much to think
But
about there. But in
good for you for making that choice. And I mean, I recommend Substack or any other email newsletter platform to writers all the time because I think for the people that are like,
yeah,
I do not want to be on social media, I'm like, start a newsletter because a newsletter is
start
a
a
safe,
newsletter.
you can talk to your audience, you can create
Yep.
content, and it's much more writer
Yep.
friendly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can also set it up so it like if you do have dopamine issues, like and you're kind of fried with that, you don't have to have a scroll. That's what I
Right.
love about Substack. You can just kind of receive some great things to your email. You don't have to scroll in the app if you don't
That's
want
right.
to. It's so nice. Anyway, I will I want to wrap up here, Lee, because I'm conscious that you've got a lot to do and you've got a best-selling book, so you've got other interviews, I'm sure. Let's wrap up today with just two little questions. You can choose to answer either or both. The first is the advice question, right? So I'm wondering, but I kind of tailored it to you. I'm wondering if you have any advice for other novelists aspiring to tackle the world of the internet. Even though you are now kind of distancing yourself from it, I would also still just say like novelists who want to write about like the moment we're living in.
Uh-huh.
So that is my first question. My second is, what can we look forward from you next? I got the prepositions wrong. So you can answer one or both.
That was so a literature professor self-consciousness that you would mess up
Oh
the
my God, I
prepositions.
know.
No one would notice.
Dangling preposition. No one cares for half God.
Okay, my advice for anyone else writing on the internet is I practice something called social listening, which is this is what they teach you
Mm,
in writing classes, which is eavesdropping, but on the internet,
yeah.
brands call it social listening. So it's eavesdropping on the internet. So this is how I
Wow.
research. Like I studied comment sections on TikTok to parody the comment section. Like when I was writing self-care, I looked at Instagram captions to try to figure out like what do I see again and again in the caption. So really find niche communities and really listen to how they talk. Listen to how people talk on the internet. Like it was so fun
Mm,
for me in the TikTok novel to keep all the typos in the comments. Like I was so glad the copy editor didn't try to change any of those. Like the copy editor got what I was putting down because it
mm.
was just so to me that's like the native culture of TikTok is that no one can spell in the comments. That's just part of the culture. So yeah, I would say practice listening if you're writing a internet novel, eavesdrop. And then I'm not planning on writing another internet novel, but I do have an idea for my next book, and it is still on the theme of millennials and aging.
Ugh,
So I'm going to continue on that
right.
track.
I'll continue aging and then I'll read it in the middle.
I'll see you
Um,
there. See you there at
wait.
40 something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting close. I'm pushing out of my 30s soon. But Leigh, thank you so much. What a fabulous interview this was. Folks, please purchase this book. Purchase it from bookshop.org. Anywhere you can purchase a book. That's one place you can purchase a book online. But please buy Leigh's book. Leigh, I'm sure are you touring right now? Are you going roundabout or are you kind of
I have one
keeping
more
it alive?
stop. I'm not sure when this
Yeah.
comes out, but I'll be in Chicago on September 24th. That's my
Oh,
next stop.
okay. Well, this is going to probably come out end of week, and I have a lot of Chicago followers. So Chicago, September 24th, where at?
It's at the Rudolf Steiner branch. It's at this like
Oh,
kooky spirituality anthropological venue.
oh my God. The like Waldorf Rudolph Steiner. Like,
Must be. I don't
that
know.
sounds
I didn't
amazing.
pick the venue, but it's big and bookseller will be there selling books. And I would love to meet anyone who's listening to this. I would love to meet you in person. I love meeting people who are from the internet. So just come and
Amazing.
introduce yourself as from the internet. I'd be happy to meet
Yes.
you.
So you heard that, folks. Go up to Lee's signing table, buy a book, and say, "Hello, I'm from the internet." She'll know. Um, Leigh, thank you
Thank
so
you. Thank
much.
you,
Yes,
Raphael. Thank you so much for having me.
fabulous. Thank you.